Well, welcome everyone. This is the VMAT committee, and we're in the process of going to different cities in Osceola County. We started in Bend. Last week we're in Sisters, Redmond, and then we'll go to Pine and then back to Bend. So yeah, public input is important to us. Before we go to that, there's a couple of things I need to announce. I'm Neil Bryant, the facilitator, and I'd ask the committee to help me be a good facilitator. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Drew. The last meeting, some people raised their hand and I didn't see you. And so this week I'm going to be in this angle, so I should be able to see people. And Matt, if I'm missing someone, go ahead and nudge me or give me a stern look. And then please don't speak until I call on you, because if two or three people start talking, and that happened last week, it's more difficult on the minutes, and then there's less control over the meeting. So I'll call on everybody, but if you could wait to speak until I call on you, that's good. And you've now been instructed on our microphones here, and if you hit speak, it turns red, and that lets me know, or you can raise your hand. That's always helpful. So the planning group thought it would be a good idea for at each meeting to talk a little bit about our process, just so that and you're all familiar with it, but the people in the audience, this will be helpful. In November of 2024, the voters decided to expand the county commission from 3 to 5, and that was November of 2024. So we have two new commissioners that'll be elected as at large in May of next year. And then they serve 2-year terms. And then in January of 2027, they'll be in another election. And this is to get staggered terms on the commission. But the existing commission decided that at some point it would be good to have districts or zones for the Deschutes County, and that's what this committee is working on. In May of 2025, they approved a 7-member citizen committee, and this is the citizen committee. They're all volunteers, and the DMAC is to create a map that shows boundaries for each of these 5 zones, and our goal is to make them as equitable as possible as far as population, registered voters, and the other criteria that's listed in our guidelines. So that's our goal. And we meet weekly, as I mentioned, and we're excited to hear the public input from around the county. And then the commission will get a report from us and a recommendation, and then they decide whether or not to put it on the May ballot. And so voters have to approve it. And that'll be at the same time there are 4 commission seats up. But they're not impacted by the zones at this time or the districts. That won't happen until 2028, just because of the timing of the elections and the results. So we are a nonpartisan group, and we're dedicated to make this as fair as possible. When you talk today, you're allowed 3 minutes, and your written testimony is certainly welcome too, and you can give it to us on our website. And when you have 30 seconds left, my timekeeper here will raise his hand. And then at 30 seconds, I'll politely have to cut you off. So, but that's what we'll need in order that the committee then can go about their business. So our first order of business deals with our minutes from the last meeting, September 17th. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Second, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
are we not doing number 2 background on the formation of DMAC with Jen Patterson listed?
Oh, yes,
On the agenda.
I went ahead and did that.
Okay.
So that was, I should have mentioned that. And Jen will come up again in the meeting later on.
I guess I had some questions, but I don't know
Oh,
when to
okay,
ask
let's
those.
go ahead and do that.
I just had a question about, were there any listening sessions or any kind of public input sessions prior to this formation of this committee?
There were not any specific listening sessions prior to this committee. The commissioners met several times between November 2024 and May of 2026 before the committee got formed. There were public comments made and submitted online as standard for the board meetings.
And then my other question was, is there any additional, or was there any additional budget allocated to this process? For instance, for additional software or consulting?
Yeah, there is $12,000 allocated to this process for consulting, contracting work. We did not, that could have pertained to anything. So that was the amount that was allocated from the get-go. We did not need additional budgeting for software.
And do we have anything, but are we having any consultants?
We have contracted Neil Bryant to be our facilitator and chair.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Samantha Smith. Would you be our first public comment? If you'd come up here and when you sit in front of a microphone, if you'd hit the speak button.
Ooh, that's right there. Good morning, and thank you all again for having me. My name is Samantha Smith, and I live here in Redmond, and I really appreciate the fact that we are having one of these sessions here in Redmond so that we can speak to the process that you all are attempting to do right now. A couple of things that I would like to focus on. Again, we have 3 minutes, correct? Okay. First thing I would like to talk about is that, man, where do I even begin? Okay. Looking at how you all have been talking about doing the districting is I've heard mention of looking at the precincts, voter registration, as I've said in the last couple times, I am concerned that we're not looking at the census numbers. I mean, we're looking at the census numbers for 2020, but again, in Redmond, we've had a lot of growth. And I don't think that those numbers reflect where Redmond is today. And so if we just, if we look at the voter registration, that actually is not the way that House districts are supposed to be drawn. House districts are supposed to be drawn based on the 14th Amendment, which is one person, one vote. And so that is already in place. If we were doing it the right way, we would be doing it based on population as opposed to precincts, voter registration, just as House districts are developed. So I'm just kind of curious, there's that one piece. Either way, I mean, specifically with that, I think that if we move forward, if you all move forward with doing a map based on precincts and voter registration, that's going to cause a problem with these maps actually coming to fruition. And representation, the bigger thing is representation, like why I'm here is for this community in Redmond and Central Oregon in general. And the fact that, as it was pointed out before, that it has not. Okay.
That's the 30-second.
That's my 30-second one. Okay. Gosh, I would really love a lot more time. And that's just, I'm just going to throw this out there then, that 3 minutes is not sufficient. You guys have talked about communities of interest. I have not heard anything discussed about people of color community, Latino community, Indigenous communities, and like you have gotten no public input, very, very little public input. And most of my friends and most of the people that I know in this community are at work right now, cannot come to this meeting. We need to have an opportunity where those folks, I know that they can write in, I know that they can send emails, but actually coming here and talking to you all about what we need in this community, you guys need to hear it. You need to hear it from all of us, not 20 of us who can like move all our schedules around. And I know that my time is way past up. Thank you very much. Thank you for all of your time.
Thank you. Gloria Olson. Do you have the red light on your microphone? It says speak.
Oh,
There you go.
no.
And if you could pull it down just a little bit.
Just, well, thank
First-
you. You're a good coach. Thank you so much. Thank you for hearing us. I want to say one thing, and that is our population at Redmond has grown. And I believe that we need to be making this map, if we're going to have a map that is going to include all the people, not just those who are registered to vote, not just those who are eligible to vote, but everyone, because our children are growing up faster than we can keep up with them. And we need to have a system which is going to include each and every single person, and that we're going to have a system which is going to be available for every person, whether you're here by nature of what I would call living here for a long time, just moved to this community. If you take a look at what's going to the growth of Redmond, there's new houses going up at all ends of this city. And we need to take that in mind. I'm concerned that we're using information from old counts, past counts, and what we're dealing with right now is current counts. And I'm concerned that this committee is not going to be able to get that information and make this something which is going to work for every single person in this district, in this county. So thank you for hearing my concerns, and I wish you well.
Thank you, Gloria.
Can I get the last name, person's name?
The Gloria Olson. Thank you.
I sent comments on this selection process to the county commissioner by email. I'm not too sure they got them, but nevertheless, I have been a part of this community for a long time, and I know what's going on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Amanda. And Amanda, I didn't say your last name because I couldn't quite read your writing, so I'm sure you'll correct me.
So I guess it's best that you can't read it. Amanda Page. Thank you again for the work you're doing. I do deeply appreciate it. It's, you're giving up your time, and I always appreciate, not you, you're giving up your time and volunteering. I appreciate it. Whenever I'm confronted with a problem at work, I try to ask myself specifically, what problem am I trying to solve? And I believe that right now we're trying to solve the problem of making sure that citizens of Deschutes County are adequately represented. The current single winner at large process is problematic. I agree. 51% of the voters can control all 5 seats on the commission right now. We do need a more proportionate choice, but I don't believe that's districting. I believe that's proportional ranked choice voting. Last week, it was suggested that we use state house district lines, but we should really not be incorporating these house district lines in the mapping process because these maps were the result of an inequitable process to start with. The 2021 Oregon legislature redistricting process was highly controversial. It was devised by Portland politicians who, although they did the right thing by taking public input, they chose to ignore it. With these maps, Oregon became the first state to gerrymander multiple tribal communities, including the Klamath tribes, which I'm a member of, and the Warm Springs tribes, both of which Aboriginal lands are in Deschutes County. This was highlighted by the Oregon Community Redistricting Report Card that was issued by Common Cause, which is a highly reputable good government group. They gave Oregon a C- for this specific reason. So I think it would be highly problematic to use these districting lines because, again, they weren't equitable in the first place. I think there are better solutions to our problem than redistricting. And again, I think it's a job that I don't envy because I don't think it can be done fairly, but I do appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you. Lena Berry. Oh.
Well, clearly I like to make an entrance, so.
Your dramatic end.
Very dramatic. My name is Lena Berry. I live here in Redmond. I am speaking today because I am concerned about the process that we have going. One, I'm wondering if the county commissioners actually receive any of our comments or if they only stay here, including the ones that are sent via email and through the website. And I would also like the comments that are sent through the website and email to be made public so that we can all see what everyone else has to say. So very much like right now, this meeting is being recorded so people can hear us. I want to know what my fellow Deschutes County citizens have to say about the process. Sorry, I'm still a little bit from falling over.
No, take a deep breath. You're doing.
And I also wonder, okay, we have a $12,000 budget, and while I very much thank you for the job you're doing, I hope it's not all going to you. And I hope that we actually do hire some consultants who take into consideration that we do have a large BIPOC population, a large Latin population, a large LGBTQIA2S+ population, the tribal populations. So there's a lot going on here. And while I very much appreciate everyone's time, and I know it takes a lot to be a part of this and put yourself out and all that you're doing, I don't feel that we are adequately represented by you all. And so I'm very concerned about that. And I just would like to say that in my ideal way of making these maps, it would all be all of Deschutes County and all at large and all of the seats with proportional ranked choice voting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Keith Rocco? Am I saying that?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Keith Rocco. I've lived in Deschutes County since 2003. I live and work here. My children grew up here, and we've been a very active part in the community here. At-large positions contribute directly to disenfranchising our communities. People tend to develop an attitude that my voice isn't heard. Communities that we live in become decentralized. They lose their personalities. They start to feel left out. A suggestion would be to keep existing lines such as precinct committees, neighborhood actions in communities that many of us have grown up in, have worked in, have become familiar with. These precincts are already divided. There's 50. We can pick a map, and if you look at the options that have been selected, that's already been taken into consideration on one or two of them. They're worth considering. And as stated in your opening remarks, you're looking to develop a plan for 5 district maps. That pretty much takes the at-large opinion off the table. It doesn't coincide with what your agenda is by looking at just at-large positions. If that's where you're going to lean, then you need to go back and look at what the premises that you folks were formed under to come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Oliver.
I'm a little short. My name is Tony Oliver. I live in Redmond, and I have been in the Deschutes County since 1986. started out in Black Butte and I keep moving east. I mean, yes, east. Anyway, I do agree with Amanda Page that it's, I respect the fact that this is a difficult decision that you all have to make. But I agree with her in the way that our county has been rather gerrymandered. And that, so I am, when you're looking at this, I would appreciate if you would look at population. And I would also appreciate if you would look at community of interest. Because of the way things are now, I really feel disenfranchised. All the area around me is a district that's not mine. For the library district adjacent to me is not mine. The state representative is really not mine. And the one that's, I'm voting with my daughter, who lives in Jennings Lodge, 3.5 hours away. So, you know, I really appreciate if you would look at communities of interest so that there are rural areas, there's urban areas, there are other areas where it's more forested and things like that, that you would appreciate the differences that there are within those communities, and also to look at the population. Because what you're making are districts that are going to be sort of set in stone for a while. So when we come up to the census in, 2030, I think we will be looking at a different Deschutes County. And then you'll have to ask the question, do you have to redistrict everything again based on population? So I think if you would appreciate taking population growth into a factor when you're making this, and focus on population as well as communities of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim McAllister.
Just a couple of quick things off the top of my head. I've been a resident of Deschutes County for over 30 years. I lived in Bend and now I live in Redmond. I would like to apologize to this committee. I think you've been assigned a fool's errand, and I think you've been set up to fail. So I'm just going to put that out there. I don't see how you can fit all these parameters into Deschutes County. I'm speaking today not just as a resident of Deschutes County, but as someone who believes in unity over division and transparency over political maneuvering. The push to carve our county into districts may sound like progress, but it risks fragmenting the very spirit that makes Deschutes strong. Right now, our commissioners are elected at large, accountable to all of us, not just a slice of the map. That means every voice matters, whether you live in Redmond, Bend, La Pine, Sisters, Terrebonne. Districting would dilute that shared accountability and tether our leaders to a narrow constituencies, not the broader public good. Let's be honest, this isn't about representation. This is about power. The rush to create districts without a public vote feels like a backroom deal. Commissioner Phil Chang himself called it undemocratic. When fellow commissioners refuse to put the question directly to voters, if we're going to redraw the lines of our democracy, shouldn't we start with consent? Districting also risks entrenching political silos. Instead of fostering collaboration, it could discourage commissioners to prioritize turf wars over teamwork. We've seen how this plays out elsewhere. More gridlock, less transparency, and fewer opportunities for genuine dialogue. In fact, some opponents of expansion warned that more commissioners could strategize outside of public view. That's not the kind of governance we need. Deschutes County is growing, yes, but growth should bring us together, not split us apart. Let's invest in better outreach, clearer communication, and stronger civic engagement, not in drawing lines that divide us. I urge our leaders to pause, listen, and let the people decide, because democracy isn't just about who sits at the table. It's about how that table is built. I'm going to remind something too. He said the commission was expanded by by a vote. That vote was 2/3 majority. I would like to remind this committee that when this, whatever you propose to the commissioners goes to a vote, it most likely will get voted down in all likelihood. And then the other thing, while you're considering your districts, consider a financial equity. I haven't heard anything about, do the people balance out financially? Do you have poor people and rich people, you know, in the same, or the one I heard last week was the community, the district with all the golf courses, all the resorts in it. I mean, I know that was just an example, but that's an example that's a reality,
And
right?
Jim,
I
your
mean-
time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jane Simmons.
Jane Simmons, I am here and I do thank all of you for volunteering. I live rurally in Deschutes County, and one of my concerns is that there aren't as many of us in the rural areas as there are in the cities, and I want to make sure that our voice is heard as well. As our founding fathers determined that we needed the Electoral College to keep things equitable for small states with a less population, we need to also consider the rural population that this county was developed on, basically the loggers and the farmers and the ranchers, and not let that voice be unheard. So we need to have our voices heard too. Thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thank you, Jane. Nathan Jenkinson.
Hello again. Wanted to bring before you, I think that, as has already been said, you've been given an impossible task. I respect that. It is a task that you've been asked to do no matter what. It's not up to you to decide whether or not to try and accomplish that. And so in light of attempting to accomplish your task with communities of interest in mind, I have made a very short list, which I hope might serve as a starting point for you to, instead of inviting people to give testimony, request testimony from various groups in the community so that it's not just people like me who have the opportunity to come and speak to you in the middle of the day when most people are working. And so I have printed this out for you. If you would like a copy of it, I have made copies for it. Two of kind of the groups that I think maybe you should focus on requesting testimony from most highly are groups that represent children and young people, as they are not accounted for in voter registration. If you are using voter registration, you will need to get testimony from people representing those groups and other people who are not on voter registration. So there's a whole list of groups here. I'm glad to share that with you. And I think that it would behoove you to specifically request testimony from them, not just invite them to testify, but reach out to them, ask them to come and share how their community will be impacted by this districting.
Thank you. Rod Cooper.
My name's Rod Coop. I live in Sisters area, also a rural resident. And my concern that I bring to you is that the rural people will be underrepresented. So I want you to keep that in mind. I noticed that even though people live in the rural part of the county do, shop and work and go to church in the cities, but they don't have a vote on what happens in the cities, how the streets are laid out or anything else about the city. They don't have a vote in that. But the people live within the city limits have a county vote. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, so don't mishear me. I'm just saying that if we need to be careful to make sure that the rural voters are not just outvoted by the people that live in the city and lose their voice living in the rural part of the county. So that's my point. Be super conscious of the fact that we can become disenfranchised by living in the rural area if we're controlled by the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Jen, is there anyone online?
If you're online and you would like to give public comments, please use the raise hand feature. I'll just make one more call. You would need to use your raise hand feature on the Zoom in order to submit a public comment.
No, okay. Thank you for your testimony. I encourage you to stay because we're actually going to look at three map options today. And I think that'll answer some of your concerns or your questions. So with that, we're going to review the draft district maps. And Jen, you're going to start us off. Oh, yes, excuse me. Carol.
Is it appropriate to respond to any of the comments?
I'm thinking about that. We can't do a dialogue between the public speaking and whatnot, but in your comments today about other things, if you want to, at that point, highlight some of the questions that were asked and what your response to that would be, that would probably be the more appropriate time to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jen.
For the record, Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager for Deschutes County. I'll just give a little bit of background. During the September 17, 2025 meeting, DMAC meeting, District Mapping Advisory Committee meeting, committee members requested that staff create draft maps for the DMAC to consider and potentially use as a starting point in their work. And there was some directives for consideration for staff to take into account when drafting those maps, which included applying the library board district map in one of the draft district maps, consider cities and unincorporated towns, examples are Tumalo and Terrebonne, present at least two options for splitting the city of Bend, north-south split and east-west split, start with population centers, and review the State House district map and see if it can be applied to a commissioner district. Several members of senior level staff met last Thursday and did a several-hour work session to come up with 3 draft maps as a starting point. If the DMAC so chooses, it's not a directive as to use that as a starting point. And before, I'll just give a quick overview of the 3 map options and how we landed at those maps. But before I do that, the one directive for the House district map, we pulled it up, we put it in our simulation, and the numbers were so far off that there was no way to do it without just completely redoing that House district map. So I did include those House district numbers and the 2020 census population count, as well as the August 2025 voter registration count. So you can just kind of see the level of populations there and how it wasn't a feasible starting point to mold precincts to fit to the House district maps. And the data that the staff used was strictly census population. We also had the voter registration population. Lee Klemper, GIS IT person, is going to demonstrate. He's retooled the visuals on there, so you'll see that. So you can see those visuals back and forth, but just as a starting point, we used the 2020 census population only. We did not do any other overlays of any of the fire district, school districts, any other kind of data points involved. Just strictly population counts is what staff used as the starting point there. And with the aim to get it within that 5% range from the 2020 census population. We got there in some cases, and then other cases, we were starting to get pretty nuanced in there and realized that we would need to start considering communities of common interest and other data points to get into within that 5% range. And we didn't want to do that deep dive work. We wanted to leave that up to the committee to decide kind of those more detailed, nuanced decision makings if you want to use one of the 3 maps or all 3 maps as a starting point. I'll give a quick background on the 3 maps. They are map option. We just labeled them map option 1, 2, and 3. And in the districts, we called them A, B, C, D, and E. They are all included in your packets. Those are posted online publicly, as well as they were printed off for any members of the public who were here in the map packets. So map option 1 was the library board district map. That was our starting point. We made a few minor changes to that. One of them was precinct 10. It's the southeast southeast corner of the county. And we wanted to make that contiguous to be within the map drawing criteria. So we made that change. And there was a couple of precincts we made to kind of get the population a little bit closer within range there. Examples of that were precinct 18. I think precinct 49 was another one that we moved a little bit on that library map. We did keep this one also shows the north-south divide for the city of Bend. We didn't get to a situation where there was a clean cut of a north-south divide, but this one shows a more north-south divide for the city of Bend, as well as keeping the city of Redmond, Sisters, and Lapine separately and wholly in each one district. And unincorporated communities, including Sun River, Terrebonne, and Temelo, are kept separately and wholly in one district. Map option number 2 was just a blank slate starting map used off of just data points. The interesting part of this map was we had a staff member use this using only tools that are available to the public, which includes the precinct data or the precinct the census and voter registration data table that we have distributed in prior meeting packets. It's also available to the public on our DMAC website that can be found at deschutes.org/DMAC, as well as the public software called Dial. So, and an Excel spreadsheet. Those were the 3 tools used to draft this particular map. So any member of public or any member of the committee has access to be able to draft a map using that capacity. We did recreate it into our software so it looks consistently similar with the other maps that you're going to see there. This map also incorporates a more west-east divide for the city of Bend and keeps the cities of Redmond, Sisters, and Lapine separately and wholly in one district. And again, unincorporated communities, including Sun River, Terrebonne, and Temelo, are also kept separate and wholly in one district. Map option 3, staff, this wasn't a particular directive, but we wanted to present a different kind of representation of a map. And so we started off taking into major highways as a kind of dividing point there, including highways 97, 20, and 126. So the, sorry, I got distracted there. The maps keep the city of Redmond separate and wholly in one district. The interesting part of this map is it does put Sisters and Lapine into one district. Unincorporated communities, including Sun River and Terrebonne, are kept separately and wholly within one district. And in this case, Temelo is divided into 2 districts. As you'll see in your precinct maps, Temelo is divided between precincts 37 and 13. So in this case, Temelo was divided. Although now I'm seeing it doesn't look divided. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was scrolled on the wrong one. So that's a quick overview of where we got for the map options. We're going to display those maps in a minute, and we're available for any questions or comments there as a starting point. But before we get that far, we did want to show you kind of the new visuals that we laid out for you, which will hopefully be a little bit easier to work within a map software system and also see the data side by side. So I wanted to give Lee a few minutes to present the new overview visuals of our software, and then happy to answer any questions about these map options. And I'll turn it back over to Neil and to Lee from here on out.
And committee, if you would also keep handy the page you got last week that shows all the precincts, populations, and the voter registration, because if you want to move precincts around, this is helpful information. Lee. Thank you for moving because I couldn't see you over there behind the computers. Lee is the county's IT and GIS person, and worked this weekend to produce those maps and design software.
Just
yes.
a quick question while he's setting up. In the future, could it be possible to see a list of precinct numbers next to the option? So it says the population, but like have the precinct numbers that are in that district? Because it was a little hard to track, because sometimes when you zoomed in, even the number didn't show up.
Yep.
Right?
No, that's a solid points. We can talk to Lee about providing
Just listing those out.
further
Yeah.
visual data for you. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, you all have monitors in front, and also that's the same photo that the presentation that the meeting members are receiving. Are you ready, Lee?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So based on some comments and feedback from the past couple meetings, as well as the working group developing the maps that you're going to see today, we developed some new visuals, hopefully are a little easier to see, a little bit clearer, and integrate some of the kind of those target ranges we talk about, the variance and whatever. So as you can see here, one of the new visual, we've got the map that shows the options that Jen mentioned. Option 1, we have option 2, and we have option 3. And we can interact with the map as we had previously. What's different here is we have this chart, and it's a dynamic chart that's tied to the map data. So as we change the data, the chart will dynamically change the numbers and adjust. As you can see here, this is the population, and we do have the voter counts. So we'll look at population here, and we can see that if you take the total population divided by the 5, we have our target, and then we have the range, which would be the lower and upper for that variance. And that range is visualized here with this that box. So we have the upper and the lower range for the population numbers. And so basically just to show how we can work with the map here. If we were to, let's just say, zoom in, and I'm going to pick something to emphasize, the kind of show the chart how it's dynamic and will adjust. So if we want to select, we'll just take this 35, and I'll change this from D to A. We're going to update it. And if you look off to the right, you will see that the chart dynamically updates and has those new totals. And so, so we chose to move one precinct, in this case 35, from what we categorized as D to A, but for this case, we'll just change it back. And you will see the graph readjust. And so, and it works the same for the voter chart. So hopefully, like I said, based on various comments and feedback and trying to make things visually easy to see and understand and tie it to those numbers of what the targets are and the ranges, built these visuals that hopefully you'll find more useful than previous meetings.
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question of clarification here, Neil. The box that's representing the 5% range, or what is the box representing at the top of the bar graphs again?
This box, there's the upper line is the upper range and the lower line is the lower range.
So it doesn't represent anything to do with the 5% number that we're aiming to get at in terms of disparity or anything. It's just showing the range.
It is the range. Yeah,
Yep.
It's the range of the 5%. So the target range is 39,651 for the 2020 census. The lowest range there is a 37,668, which is the bottom line of the box. And the top range there is the 41,633, which is the top of that range. So and then you can see from the graphs in there. So in this example, section A is outside of the target range. Section B is in the target range. Section C is a tiny bit out of the range. Section D is outside the range by 15, and then section E is within the range. So it's just an additional visual tool.
Yes. Bill.
So I see we're using the actual census numbers. Are we going to continue to use that throughout today, or are we going to go back and forth, or what was the plan?
What we have for you today is using the actual census numbers from 2020.
So my only thought about that, because we didn't really come up with how we're going to do that. although I've heard the comments of people that the census would ultimately be more accurate, I just think it's so far off some of the areas, and I'm just concerned that we're going to spend a lot of time if we're going towards deciding things that may not be based. I mean, like they've said, there's been places that have grown a lot more, and those are reflected in the voter rolls, at least the growth, I mean, the relative sizes. So I'm just a little worried that we'll get that problem. So I don't know.
I can respond to that. The data has both. So if Lee toggles over to 2, that's the voter registration. So
Oh, okay.
both
That's what
data is loaded
didn't
in
know.
for all of the maps for both. And in all of the interactive is the census and the voter registration. And that's also included in your packet is the census and the voter registration.
Right. Okay, thanks.
We just started as the census population as we just chose one data set to do our work in, but all the data is provided for both sets.
Melanie.
So I have forwarded to the committee the American Community Survey, which is updated more frequently and which is available on the census.gov website. And that is something that we could use that is more recent to compare to the 2020 numbers and to find a more, I think, accurate population given the growth in the area. And I would submit that we should look at that as well.
And that again was,
The American Community Survey that I emailed to the
Okay.
group this week.
other comments on the process?
Sorry.
Matt.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive of the idea of using something different than the 2020 census. Primarily, this paints a completely different picture. And if there's some more accurate census data, I think it might make sense too. But yeah, this is a whole different ratio of population changes based on, if we assume that voter rolls at least reflect current population. I'm in agreement that I think that 2020 is maybe too outdated based on growth trends.
Other comments? Melanie.
My only other comment was just visual. A and B are real close in color for me and hard to distinguish. So I encourage bold colors instead of pastels maybe to help. When I was looking through the maps and trying to parse down sort of the splits, it was hard sometimes to remember which one was which.
Yes, we've discussed that while we were developing these maps, and because we already had printed and used some previous colors, but we're talking about for next time, making much more bold and distinguishable.
Ed.
When you're putting these districts together, what thought did you put into communities of interest?
Staff did not take that into consideration. We did strictly census data, and we reiterated that the last meeting was that we weren't going to delve into communities of interest. We were just going to do strictly starting points based off of the directive that the DMAC gave us during the September 17th meeting. And that's why I think option 1 is a good example of why we were outside of range. We were starting to really get into it, and then we realized we didn't have the direction to further detail into communities of common interest, and thought that nuance work was better left to the DMAC to do that.
So that's something that could be added.
Yeah, I mean, you as a committee can determine how to move forward here, but these very much in our minds were starting points for the committee to start work on, or could start a fresh map or any other considerations too, but really just starting points. They weren't submitted as maps for consideration for votes. I mean, the committee can decide how they want to move forward with that, but it was, a general starting point then to dive into the deeper work. Yeah.
Drew.
Yeah, as option 1 is based on or some sort of derivation of the library board district map. I wonder if we can talk about that for a second, just the provenance of that. The library board map, I assume, is based on 2020 census data. Is that right? Or do we know that?
Yes, it should be.
Okay.
Those lines were provided by the library district themselves, so they could speak to that.
And did they go through, because the library board predates 2020, did they then go through a redistricting process in 2022, and that's what this map is?
They did, but I don't know. I'm not sure what that process entailed.
Okay. Because I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel. So if there's anything we can borrow, steal from the library board process, I'm all for it. I have no idea whether they looked at community of interest. I'm going to give myself some homework to try to go back and look at this a little bit. But the other thing perhaps you could do for us quite easily would be to provide the numbers that sat behind those 5 zones. I've got the map here, but I don't see, unless I'm missing it somewhere, I don't see the numbers graphed out like we have for the other maps.
Are you-
Just to
are you
kind
asking
of
the
see the
numbers for
trend.
the
around it.
library board or is
Yeah.
it? Okay.
That's option 1. That's option 1. The library numbers can be a little bit different because they did move it around a little bit to get to option 1.
Drew, can you provide further clarification? Are you asking for actual census and voter registration number for the current library board map, not for map option number 1?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It just kind of useful to see how things have moved a little bit, or what the baseline was for the library board, since this is taken off from that.
Yeah, I agree with that. We don't know, are they within 5%, 1%? Note that one of theirs isn't contiguous, which the staff had to fix. So I think learning more about that would be really helpful. I could not find, Drew, anything on their website about redistricting.
Bill.
So we've seen these, and thank you for the work for doing it, but what do we want to talk about them?
I think it'd be helpful to go through in more detail the 3 options, and the DMAC can put together their own map too. This just tells you that you can receive instant information on the target, the range, both on population that we have and also on the voter registration. You can add other items to it if you wish, and that whatever additional information that has. As I recall from our last discussion, because we're not interested in any type of gerrymandering, looking at the voter registration in each precinct, we would delay until we had a pretty good idea what we thought the map should look like. That way we can't, people can't say, well, this is what drove you to the map you're considering, but it still needs to be looked at to eliminate the fact that there's no attempt to gerrymander in what we're doing. But Lee has the ability to layer on other things in the presentation of the maps. And I don't know if you have at this point a suggestion on what map you'd like to pursue. Matt.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. We've also received, by my count, at least 3 different proposals from members of the community. And would it be possible to take a look at what they might look like in comparison also? I don't want to completely, we're here to listen to public comment, but so far we've completely ignored those that have been provided by public comment.
I can take a stab at that. So I think staff can recreate or create any new proposed maps, and we can come back next week if there is a majority of the committee who is interested in seeing a specific map or with a specific direction for recreating an additional map to list up there in the options. Right now, option 4 that's listed is blank. And we can certainly, I think Lee can do work real time in the 3 options that are already loaded. And then staff is happy to take back a majority consensus of building out a new map that's with specific directive. So if it's one that's created, that's been submitted.
If I might, yeah, I guess my thought is to give credit or credence to the fact that we've had public input. Quite frankly, I'd be interested to see all 3 of the maps that the public has provided and see how they compare. Maybe they've put enough thought and effort into it. There may be one of them that is a closer solution than what we've come up with so far.
Carol.
I think I was hearing from several people that we wanted to use more up-to-date numbers. And so I would suggest that in drawing these upcoming maps that we use more current demographics as opposed to looking at this as wonderful. I had some ideas on how we should move things around. But if in fact the numbers aren't where we want to be addressing, then I think we're kind of wasting our time to do this unless we just want to play with it.
Bill.
I'm in favor of getting the citizens maps put on, I mean, before the next meeting. I think we did go over, was it Greg Bryant's map? And, you know, that actually had a lot of good things to it, I thought, but we don't know that exactly. We didn't talk specifically about all of it, but then was Dr. Tripp had a map, and I think we have another map now. So I'd be interested in that. I'll make comments on these specifically, but it just has to do with the idea of common interests or efficiency or effectiveness of different districts. But I don't know if we're ready to talk about any of that or where we're.
I think you can go ahead and raise it right now if you'd like.
So to me, the option one has a district that starts in South County and goes all the way into the center of Bend. And to me, that's not a common, community of common interest really, because of it's just a starting point. Now, maybe it also includes Deschutes River Woods, which is 42, which is kind of transitioning from more rural to urban, but it's a fairly rural. But once you get to 5, and then 47 includes Broken Top and everything in the Mill District. 4 is the other side of, is all residential in downtown Bend roughly. And it's just, that's an example to me of something that's not a community of common interest from my point of view. They would be more in common with the precincts around them. So I think one of the maps we looked at the other day had that particular district reaching over to the east, which is, it was 43 and 10. I know we're in it. I don't know. And maybe something off the corner of the city there is more rural. That's being developed now. So it's going to be pretty urban. So that's just one observation. The other observation is that if I was designing districts, just in terms of efficiency, on option 3, the district that goes from South County all the way up to Black Butte is a very inefficient from a travel standpoint. And having traveled a lot around the county, that would be, I don't know if that'd be a popular, somehow I would think those are different areas from just in terms of what people actually, their lives and what they do. And it's a long stretch of that I wouldn't, so that'd be another example of something I wouldn't put in the same district. So those are 2 thoughts.
Okay, your last comments was on option 2.
They had to do with option 3, the one that was based on roads.
All right.
I think. Is that right?
Other comments, Melanie?
I think we should establish if there's a majority that want to use the American Community Survey data just before we kind of move forward, to Carol's point, just so that we know that, because these maps might look a little different if we're using that updated population data. And then I have a couple of comments as well. So.
Can I just speak real quick to the updated population data? We are not able at this juncture. We have reached out extensively to the Portland Population Research Center. We are not able to update to a precinct level 2020 census population. We can update voter registration data in real time. The one you have right there, I think, is August 26, 2025. We can run the numbers and have that updated more frequently. But to get it to a granular level, and I'll let Lee and Steve speak further to this, we can get an updated census estimate for the county, but not in a further granular level to apply it to mapping.
Okay, so I'm not talking about the PSU estimates. I'm talking about the American Community Survey, which is on census.gov. So I'd like that to be explored because I can see that when I go onto their website at the census tract data, and maybe I'm looking there and maybe I'm looking at the wrong data. But if that is available, I think that we should use it. So maybe the action is to explore that and to see if that is a possibility, and maybe it's not. But I do share the concerns about using 5-year-old data at this point, so.
I would move to include that data if available. Make a motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A discussion? Phil?
I guess I'd just like to see it at a meeting, what it is and what it's based on and who prepares it. And then maybe vote at the next meeting once we have it in front of us to decide that. But I'm still committed to just using the voter rolls because I think in Oregon, the voter rolls are the most up to date of adults, the motor vote. So everybody in high school automatically gets registered at 18. They get their notices when they're 16. So if you have kids that are 16, they're already in the system. They get the notice when they turn 18, they're gonna be registered, and it's very automatic. And it's been a big part of our voter growth in the last 10 years, basically. And then with motor voter, people moving here, that's where a lot of our voters are immediately registered. And so I think it's going to be the most reflective of the growth. I get the idea of the population. And there was interesting comments about representing children and their viewpoints. I was thinking, and so I was active in student government in high school, and I was pretty active, and I was a good student. But I really didn't, at 18, I barely knew anything about the county I grew up in. It just wasn't my focus. So I kind of trust my parents or adults to do that, and we're not voting yet. So I'm okay with the voting people being the basis for the districts as we're presenting them. I think it's the most fair and the most responsible, I guess.
Melanie?
I could not find another county that districts in this state that uses voter registration. All of them use population, and they all are on a cycle of updating after the census so that they have accurate population data. I think it's a disservice to the folks in this county if we only use voter registration. I think it can show us trends on growth. I don't think it can show us accurate enough information about population for us to draw these maps. And I think it's really important that the people that don't have a voice because they're not registered voters, whether they're too young or they don't drive, are still people that need to be represented by these seats. And so I think we need to take them into account.
Other discussion? Drew?
Yeah, I think we've got to recognize we're in pretty uncharted waters here. And we're doing something that is mid-census. And really, we're doing it. We have certain instructions from the commission, but as far as I know, they didn't instruct us whether to use, otherwise this is all a moot conversation. They didn't instruct us whether to use specifically voter registration data or census data, population data. And so I think we're in such a fluid situation. I would suggest that actually it behooves us to look at all of that information. And by the way, I appreciate some of the comments and the sympathies of the public commenters about us having a thankless task. I do think it's thankless, but that's not the same thing as a hopeless task. I think if we take as much information on as possible to make this an informed decision, not relegating ourselves to simply saying it's going to be population data or voter registration data or growth data. I think let's look at it all to try to inform this decision as best we can. The variables aren't so crazy between this stuff to be able to make this work. So I would suggest, there's two things we've debated a little bit already, and on both those, I'm going to fudge. I'm going to say when it comes to communities of interest, you're not going to have a gold standard answer. And for this particular question, I don't think there's a gold standard answer. I think, as my friends back in Britain would say, we just have to muddle through.
Further discussion on the motion? Ned?
I like the current data. I mean, it's current we can get, and if the group that Melanie talked about has more current data, I'd like to look at that too. But I think about the correlation between the two of them. Not all districts grew, so you could look at the ones that did grow and make a decision on them in terms of the map, and use the correlation between them instead of the actual this data or that data.
Melanie, does the information from the source you talked about break it down into precincts?
No, they don't measure on precincts. They measure on census tracts, which is what, some other softwares that do districting things
Lee has an answer maybe.
So if I can add to that, the American Community Survey data was done at different intervals, and they do to the tract and block group levels, which are much larger units of area. And so that's harder to translate to kind of the precinct level we have. The census blocks go down to the population level. Those other groupings, the tract and the block groups, those, between census years, they might capture other types of data, but not the same population counts that the blocks have for the decennial census. And reaching out to the Population Research Center to discuss the statistics they give, oftentimes you'll see they do like those every 10-year projections for what they expect the population to be in Oregon, or down to the county level, or maybe at like urban versus rural areas, but don't have that information kind of mid-decennial census to the block level like we're using now, which pairs better with the precincts.
Steve, were you going to add something?
No, I just thought Lee had something to add that was critical to the vote that was being conducted. But I'd like to ask Lee to do one thing. If you could toggle over to the voter registration totals. Number 2. I'm sorry, just go to number 2. And then back. Okay. I'm trying to see if there's that correlation that we're talking about, and if that's maintained. That 5%, we're getting to that variance, or even very close with each one of these, regardless of which data point we're using. That range is getting really, really close. So I think the work can even begin in parallel, in my opinion, that regardless of which data point you're using, you're still going to get to that closer variance of that 5%. So none of them are 10 or 15. What if we're talking about census data as of today, it's not going to be that far out of spec. The registered voters are pretty well in line with that census of 2022 or 2020. And that's just my point. Toggling back and forth sees that we're kind of comparing that ratio of apples to apples.
Ned.
I guess what I think is this work is great, but unless we agree on what a community of interest is, it's kind of mute. It's just numbers at this point. Like somebody said, that one goes from South County to North County. Is that a community of interest? And if it's not, then why are we worrying about it? Because the numbers, the census numbers, or either voter registration numbers are missing one important element of the decision, and that's a community of interest. So we need to spend some time deciding what the community of interests are. And I went back online and found some more stuff on the library board. They do have the numbers. Maybe you guys have all that. And they did define the communities of interest. So that might be worth considering how they looked at communities of interest, because without communities of interest, I mean, it's easy to manipulate numbers, but if you don't know where you're going, it's not going to help you.
And Steve, on doing the precincts, you considered community of interest there, correct?
I think as mentioned previously, a lot of these precincts have been, they were established a long time ago, but I do believe that was part of that process initially. But they are all commonly grouped by the makeup of a certain amount or combination of districts.
Neil, I just wonder if we can call the motion. Feel like we've got kind of a far afield with the discussion here. So, we've
All
got
right.
something on the floor.
The vote has been called. The first vote is then whether or not to cut off debate. And then if this decision is yes to do that, then you vote on the motion. So you called the issue. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes. Now we vote on the motion. And it was Drew's motion for the additional information from the source that Melanie cited and put in her email. Was there anything else to that motion?
No,
Okay.
just for us to consider that, have that available to us for consideration
All
going
right.
forward.
All those. in-
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a
We've ended
clarification.
debate.
What was the vote on?
Point of order, we've ended debate.
Oh,
Yeah, because it requires 2/3 vote to cut off motion, and I didn't hear through 2/3 of the
oh, I
body.
thought it was 2/3.
There were no nays.
Abstentions don't count as an affirmative.
On the motion to end debate, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Raise your hand, that'll help too.
Aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay.
Okay, we can keep debating it. I would
Then
love
we
to do
continue
that.
the debate. Yes, no.
I think, again, it is a disservice to this community to not look at our updated population numbers. We are one of the fastest growing places in Oregon. We've heard repeatedly from Redmond that they have grown and changed, and they want us to take that into account. I understand from staff, it may not fit perfectly into our precinct maps. I think looking at a census tract map will still give us information about what the population is. I haven't seen even an updated population number for the county, and I think it's quite different than it was in 2020. So I think we need to be considering that when we are carving up the county into districts. And I don't think it's going to hurt us to say, hey, let's look at this and see if it's useful to us in making our decisions about communities of interest and about what districts we're drawing.
True.
Yeah, and by the same token, I think Phil and some others have mentioned the maps that have been brought to us by the community. I'm all in favor of looking what our amateur cartographers can do. But by the same token, I think having some additional population data coming from another source, I don't know why we wouldn't turn any of this down at this point. You know, we need all the information we can get to make our way through this. So that's why I proposed the motion, why I feel like we should go forward with that.
Matt.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that the most recent data is important to get where we're trying to go. My concern is that if the data doesn't provide the breakdown down to the level that we're trying to achieve, I mean, it's garbage in, garbage out. If we don't have data that reflects the areas that we're looking at, it doesn't do us any good at all. And so, you know, a ratio analysis, I mean, if voter registration is representative of population trends, that may be more, I mean, quite frankly, I'd love to see current data for this week on what, you know, where things are at. But if it doesn't drill down to the type of areas that we're actually looking at in order to create divisions within, to create the districts, I mean, it doesn't matter how recent it is if it doesn't give us the areas that we need in order to make a decision on.
Carol.
But if we don't look at it, how are we going to know how far down it will go and if it would actually show something that we can use?
Phil.
So I voted or abstained or voted against ending debate because I think what Lee said is real relevant to our process. If they can't get it to that level, I don't see the point of trying to create a whole system to do it on something that is not a census. I'm not sure how it is. It'd be interesting to have a presentation on how they get it to see it, how good it is. But I think, and the other thing I want to say is I've heard all this concern that somehow Redmond's not going to be represented. I think Redmond's absolutely going to be represented. I think there's nobody that's going to not do that. And it's very obvious how much growth there is. You can drive around here and you can also, it's reflected in the election rolls. So I don't think there's any intent to do anything to harm the interests of Redmond by doing this. And I think it will be reflected in the voter rolls. And maybe Steve can talk more about that. But every month they come out and you can see the numbers change on the number of registered voters and you can see the growth in the county. I mean, it's in 2010, I think the number of voters was, or 2016 was like 128,000. Now it's 163,000 or something. So it shows. And I'm saying that's the most effective way for us to make decisions. We can look at whether it correlates to what it was in the census. And we may say, wow, you know, District 28 has really grown a lot, whereas, you know, or Precinct 28, but this one hasn't. But that's all interesting. But the most relevant is the current. So that's why I'm really just in favor of going forward with that as a way to get to the next step.
Ben.
I guess my point is the numbers are great and I live in the numbers world. But unless we have some kind of agreement on what communities of interest are, the numbers don't mean anything. And we can manipulate them any way we want, right? Numbers don't lie, but liars use numbers. So I'm not saying we're lying. I'm just saying that if we can't come up with that other element of communities of interest, the numbers don't count. They don't matter. I mean, I think what people have done is like Redmond, to me, that's a community of interest, but we haven't agreed on that. And maybe we haven't even agreed on Redmond. But I'd like to see us kind of do what the library board, which I have their data, they defined communities of interest. And then they did the numbers. We're doing the numbers and then we're gonna maybe overlay communities of interest. I'm not quite sure what our process is. So I think you gotta do all three at the same time, or, I mean, it's easy to manipulate numbers. It's easy to move the districts around, whatever, current data, old data. If all you're doing is massaging the numbers, it still doesn't answer what we're trying to get to, in my view. So we need to discuss what a community of interest is and how we get to an agreement on what that is. So Redmond maybe is, maybe South County is. I don't know what we're going to agree on, but without that, just moving the numbers around doesn't do anything for me.
Thank you. Other comments? Melanie?
I think having the most up-to-date population data that we can have, even if it's at census tract date level, can help us to understand where our communities of interest are as well. And so I don't think there's harm in looking at it, and I'm not really sure why there's such resistance.
Drew?
Ned, which came first, chicken or the egg? Because that's what we're dealing with here. We have a hard request to bring these numbers to where they're within 5% of one another. So if you start with a community of interest, that's just going to lead you so many different directions. And the evidence I've seen wherever that phrase is used is it comes down to almost something you'd call in the eye of the beholder. You can talk till you're blue in the face. And if we are going to debate that, I don't think we're going to ever get there. So I think you got to work with the numbers first, and then you work as best you can with the community's interest around that. Some things are pretty obvious. I mean, the city of Redmond, I think all of us would agree, that's community of interest. I would propose, if we get off the debate that I think we're still having about Melanie's proposal, that for me, option 3 is a non-starter today. So we can start saying certain things maybe don't work. But I look at option 3 and I say, well, I know that doesn't work because it's, to Phil's point earlier, it's unworkable from a logistical standpoint, whoever's got to represent that district. But also I know working in Sisters, and I do know some people come from Lapine from time to time to our movie theater. I really thank those people. Some come from Prineville. They come a long ways, but not very many people do. And the interests of people in Sisters are far removed, I think, from the people of Lapine. So I look at option 3 and say that's a non-starter. But I'm getting off track here. My point is, I really think you have to start with the numbers, or else you're not going to get anywhere. You'll just spin your wheels forever if we're just going to talk about communities of interest.
Ned?
I guess starting with the numbers and getting current numbers is very important to me. I need that for my brain. But I'm struggling with, I mean, you already said North County to South County is not community of interest, so we ought to eliminate option 3. First of all, these aren't options. These are examples in my mind. And I'm just saying that if we do the numbers and then justify the community of interest, we'll have backlash that doesn't help. I don't know why we can't think of all of them together at the same time.
Point of clarification.
Oh, hold on.
Point of clarification.
No.
So is the motion that, was the motion made that we would access this database and have the county staff work it into the precinct somehow, or what were we going to do with the data? Or we were using it as the third tier of deciding whether we've got the right populations represented or what?
To me, it was just another data point, Phil. I was just, I don't know how that ultimately maps. I think we've heard that there's some difficulties in getting that down to the precinct level. But I feel like we are going to be making some judgment calls anyway, regarding growth, regarding ultimately how communities' interests are defined and where they are. I mean, there's only so much granularity we can get to. And ultimately the precinct business is a best case scenario. I mean, I want to be kind to the county folks. I really don't want to break precincts. But at some point we may say, well, we got to break a precinct to make this work, either for population or community interest. So I don't want us to be completely beholden to the precinct data to make this recommendation either. I think it's an important factor. But so anyway, I just think more information is better. That's all.
Bill, are you asking again, or is it your light just on? All right, Melanie. All right. Any further discussion? So the motion is to have staff use the additional information from the American Institute and see how it can be incorporated into what we're trying to do here. Is that correct?
I think the motion is cut off debate first.
No. So
Second.
the motion to cut off debate failed.
All right.
I mean, they continued. So we are now on the real motion. So if I say that correctly, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Raise your right hand. Okay. Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? I'm learning. One abstention. All right, it passes. So the next meeting we'll get that information. Phil.
I'd like to make another motion. I'd like the staff to do that and then a presentation be made of how the data's arrived at, if they're not actually doing counts, and just what sources they use to make this database, and some kind of presentation so we can see. And then how does it work to put it into precincts before we get into, I mean, I don't mind them accessing it, but I just think in terms of the efficient use of our time. So I'd like to do that first step. Well, I guess that was the discussion also.
I was seconding.
Pardon?
I was seconding.
Okay, if that was a motion, we have a second. Other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? All right, and the other thing, yes, Jen.
I'd just like to speak directly to that. So staff is hearing you and will take that directive. I did spend about 45 minutes in the website and was not able to pull the data, but I am not a data person. So we will work closely with our IT team, but I want to manage expectations that the staff will look to see what we can get. But at this time, we don't think we can get that data, but we will delve into it further. And again, I think I'm the only one who spent a deep dive into it, and it's just not my forte. So
Melanie.
Can we set an expectation that this is maybe in a couple of meetings to allow time? This meeting cadence is really hard on the staff when we have complicated questions that we want answered and data that we need. And so I don't know if we can sort of set expectations that if there's more time that's needed to help to gather that. And that's why I was asking about budget to help staff potentially with a consultant or somebody else who knows more about these things to help them find the data that we're asking for. I would be okay with that because I recognize that this is not an easy task for staff to do after this meeting and then having very few business days to even get working on the things that we asked them to do.
If Lee and staff need additional time, we'll certainly bring that to the committee and ask for additional time. We'll begin with that, and we'll see. I'll go to Jen first and then back to you, Carol.
yeah, and I'd just also like to provide clarification that we spent a lot of time on this very particular question way before a committee was formed. We spent a lot of time behind the scenes before we even went to the commissioners with this, and within conversations those conversations that were particularly with Portland Population Research, PSU, Portland Population Research Center. So we have not looked into this other website that Melanie has provided. So we will look into it further. But we did try to resolve this question, and we resolved it as best as we could through a deep dive with IT, with PSU Population Research Center. And we were not able to get up-to-date census population data, and we were not able to find it. We will take another crack at it, but it is something that we spend significant amount of time in pre-committee development.
Another thing I thought there was a consensus on was Ned's request to take a look at what the school district, excuse me, and I forgot about you, Carol. You
No,
go first.
Well, you're saying exactly what I wanted to say,
Okay.
was that we were going to, we wanted to discuss, or Ned brought up the library board process, which is something that has not been shared with everyone. And so I would like, maybe not at this meeting, but at the next meeting, for Ned or somebody from the library board to explain to us how they came up with their plan. That's not necessarily a motion, maybe discussion. Ned, back to you.
And if I sense a consensus, we don't need a motion, but I knew 2 or 3 people were nodding their heads. So is that agreeable? Okay. Thank you.
I would like,
Oh, Ned.
it occurs to me, I mean, just manipulate the numbers, I get it, but that's a computer program. It's not a decision. But I'd like to know, maybe have us all think about, we don't necessarily need a motion or anything. What do we each define as a community of interest? Because that's going to be part of the decision whether we like it or not. Just moving the boxes around is not going to do it. We're still going to have to come up with that. And and to me, that's the hardest part. That's the impossible part people are talking about, is the numbers. I can do that with a computer.
Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that, we have opened it up to public input at their last few meetings. And, we've had some criticism on the way, maybe the way we're doing things, but what I haven't heard yet is anybody offering up what they suggest communities of interest should be. I mean, I think we can all kind of, there was some folks who said, well, are we addressing persons of color and some, but is there any specifics that anybody's offered up? I mean, Bend is kind of an obvious one. Redmond is an obvious one. South County. But other than that, are there any other specifics can be offered up from the community?
Bill.
So if I kind of agree that we need to come up with what these definitions are. I guess I have them already I'm already stating some of mine, and maybe we come up with a prioritization of it, or we put together motions about certain topics. As an example is, I do think that particular cities are communities of interest in general. Bend is too large to have one district, so you got to figure out how to split it up. But I think so. That's an example to me. So that we could propose motions if that's what would get us there. So we're kind of looking at the maps with that. Maybe another one's the communications or the road connections is another one. We can come up with a variety of ones, I think, and then agree as a group by vote or something.
The census divides the county into 5 different areas, 4 cities: Bend, Redmond, Lapine, and Sisters, and then the unincorporated area, which is all the things that aren't part of the cities. That's a kind of the census community of interest, I think you could say. But what you're all talking about is taking that and then going down further and trying to figure things out. And the challenge is going to be that a portion of Bend, because of its population and its voter registration, it's going to be part of other districts. And so then how do you define and allow that to happen when there may be a different community of interest between those 2 districts? So that's another challenge. Matt.
Yeah, and I guess that's my point is that, when you're divvying up different areas, for example, Bend is going to have influence in multiple other different districts. And Bend is too big to be one district. Is north, south a better division within Bend, or east, west, or whatever? Which portions of Bend might fit into other districts as a more of a better fit for a community of interest? And like I say, that was what I was getting at is, and maybe we can drill down a little more. Which portions of which part of the county might fit best with the others. Granted, we've massaged the numbers to make the numbers match, but which precincts do you match up with which ones to create commonalities?
Bernie.
Didn't that gentleman have a list of what he came up with for areas of common interest? Did he give it to us that we could?
Yes.
Okay,
We have that. We'll circulate it.
okay, thank you.
I think there might be enough copies here, but I'll make sure everyone gets one. Carol.
I think at the last meeting or the meeting before, we were kind of assigned the task to decide what community of interest was, but I think we ended up just having it be very generic. And now I'm hearing that we wanted to be more specific. Is that right?
Bill, your light's still on. Did you have another comment?
Sorry.
No. I like these lights. Melanie.
So as I've previously stated, I think cities are an obvious community of interest. I think unincorporated communities are an obvious community of interest. So if we have a map, for instance, that divides Tumalo, that makes no sense to me. I do want to make a couple of points about the options that are on our agenda today. And all three of these options, Bend is divided into 4 separate districts. So you'll have 4 different commissioners representing the people of Bend. I'm not sure that any of these are reasonable as far as dividing this community of interest. And I think I ask again, sort of what problem are we trying to solve here? Because if we're trying to say we want to make sure there's people from places that are outside of cities on this board, you may have 4 commissioners from Bend because all of these districts divide Bend up into 4. And you will have in Redmond only ever 1 commissioner from Redmond. They will never have 2, they will never have 3, they will have 1. So again, I want to ask, what are we trying to solve? We've heard some comments about proportionality. For people to understand what that means, are we looking to have a board that is proportional to how voters are registered, which means, or how voters vote, which is not the same as registered, I might add, because of motor voter. We have a lot of folks registered as non-affiliated. They're just automatically registered, and many of them never vote. And actually the turnout is lower in that group than in the groups that are party affiliated. So again, what problem are we trying to solve and how are we getting there? And is dividing us up into 5 separate districts going to get us the result that we are looking for here? I submit the way that these maps are drawn, it's probably not. And I think this is the difficulty of the task of not being allowed to look at anything at large, is that you are going to have to crack Bend into pieces, which means Bend is going to have say and sway in every district. And if we're really looking for geographical representation, we can divide the county into areas, say you have to live there, and let the full county vote on each person. That's a way that the school district does it. And that's the way that Missoula County does it, as Phil Chang submitted to us. So those are just things to think about, but these maps that are before us, I'm not sure having Bend have 4 different commissioners representing Bend and the rest of the county, sort of hopeful that someone from their area would also be able to get in is what we're looking for, given what I think the problem is that we're trying to solve.
By the way, I'm going to pass out. I have 8 copies of what was given in public testimony for community of interest, and I have one for you too. All right, let's go, Phil.
Well, there was a lot in those comments, but I don't really agree with the, you repeated this several times, that what problem were we trying to solve? I don't think we're trying to solve a problem unless you say we're trying to solve the problem of being appointed by the commissioners to come up with 5 districts which reflect the things that were put in the guidelines. That's the answer of what we're asked to solve. We're not creating our own definition of what we're going to have, what we are trying to solve. They said what we're trying to solve. Now we're just trying to find the mechanisms to do it. So I don't agree with the premise, and I just want to say that.
Ned.
I think Melanie was making my point. 4 districts starting in Bend. I mean, are there 4 different communities of interest that all intersect in Bend? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's exactly the point I was trying to get to without being as articulate as Melanie is.
Other comments?
Well, I have a comment.
Oh.
So
Phil.
as to that particular idea, I'm in agreement that it doesn't, or I guess what I thought you said, it doesn't make sense to have 4 districts all being part of Bend. As I said, just the example of one where you're reaching all the way from south of Lapine up to Drake Park. I just don't see the connections really that are as clear as some of the other ones. So there are parts, or to Broken Top, I just don't see those areas as similar. So I would not have 4 coming in and from different sides of Bend, because I think the big problem with the library district based one is they did it that way, and they ended up with, and so the board is very, I mean, it reflects Bend, I think, more so than the rural community, in my opinion. Or others, or another, or more than just the other unincorporated communities or the towns that are further away.
Yes, Melanie.
This is a question for Lee. So on the mapping, is it possible to go through the districts and see percentages of language groups, percentages of ethnicities, poverty, as was mentioned in our comments today, age? Are there any demographics that we can see for these districts when they are being drafted?
Not with the maps that we have right now, but if we look at other data, we can see perhaps how some of that might look.
I think that can inform whether we are dividing communities of common interest or not, looking at the census data around where people live, and some of these categories of demographics, I think would be helpful. So I just wanted to ask that. And then is it also possible at some point to determine, as a lot of folks going through redistricting will look at, is what is the partisan makeup of these? Is that possible with the software that you have, to just say where the voters are falling in each district?
I would defer to Steve here.
yeah, so-
He gives me the data, and we can definitely.
Will that correlate?
look at that.
So that is possible. So there are several possibilities that have been discussed. So correlating partisan data is possible, correlating or overlaying some census tract data is possible. Staff will need to do the work and bring it back. So if there's a motion and a majority of the members want to see very specific things to direct staff to do the work for, we can do that. We just can't do it in real time here.
Sure.
If
sorry.
you want to do the specifics, would the committee like to think about that and come back to specifics? So that Lee has a better idea of what's possible? Melanie.
Is it possible to import the census data such that we have every category that the census collects?
There's a lot of data in the census data, so having some specifics of exactly what it is you'd like to see would greatly help define the scope, so we could take a look at if it's available or not.
Melanie.
Yeah, what I would propose is that at the precinct level, if we could be able to see that, so that if we're moving precincts around, that we have that granularity, that would be great.
Bill.
So I don't know where we are in the demographics and everything. I guess I just don't know. I personally don't feel the need to examine every demographic to get to just the voter groups. Most of the county, I'm not sure how many departments. I think about the road department. Is it dependent on, would demographics affect that? Do I need to know how many people are of different age groups? It was interesting. Somebody said about the, different income levels. I don't know that that's something I want to sort out for the kinds of decisions the county makes on things, how we're going to run the landfill, or how the sheriff's office is patrols. I mean, those are the things that the county's involved in. I just don't see all those things is necessary to get to some fair and nonpartisan or, equitable districts. So seems like a lot of extra work for the county and for us to go through all that and ultimately we're giving it to the commissioners to decide what they do with it.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question actually, is maybe to throw a wrench in the works, but we're trying to get to 5%, but I thought you said the state law said 10%.
The Secretary of State's guidelines say you can stay within the constitutional boundaries of things with 10%, because they know it's not going to be perfect and between the population and we also rely on the voter registration. The committee chose 5% in the guidelines, but Secretary of State said 10%. So when we do this in these maps, it's at 5%. I know.
But we could consider more.
We could consider more.
Okay.
Melanie.
Just to clarify, we were told 5% by the commission in the mandate. Every other county that has districts in Oregon net is within about 1% on their districts. I just wanted to make the point to Mr. Henderson's comments. It actually does matter if we are districting to make sure we're looking at certain demographics. If you are having a district that is a certain part of the county that is more wealthy, that has more leisure time, that can come to meetings and make comments, that can call and email their commissioner versus working class or poor people that are all concentrated in one district that do not have the same ability to have that access with their elected representative or to engage in gathering information about what's going on in the county. These are things to think about when you're trying to say we're going to be representing certain parts of the county. And there are also studies that show that when you divide up into specific districts, the folks in those districts tend to concentrate on their needs alone. And I can tell you from being an elected official that the people that show up to meetings at 1 p.m. On a workday are not broadly representative of the whole county necessarily, just because there are barriers of access to being here, as several people have pointed out. So I think it's worth considering some of these different demographics. And I think especially the language or ethnic minority group is one of our provisions that we shall not draw districts that dilute the voting strength of any of those groups. So I think we just have to see those to see what's happening in the county with those groups, just to make sure we're not violating that provision.
I would like to propose that party affiliation should be the last thing that we look at, if we look at it at all. And I say that as a state member of the Independent Party of Oregon. I'll also let folks know for the public record, I was one of those chief petitioners to make this office nonpartisan against the wishes of some in my own party, by the way. Some people in the Independent Party of Oregon say, why are you doing this? We're a party. You should want partisan offices everywhere. And I said, no, not at the county level. And throughout the state, we've seen nonpartisan works better. So I don't know why we would consider party affiliation for a job that we have now distinctly said as a county, as somebody pointed out, by a 2/3 vote, should be a nonpartisan job. I would like us to exclude that from consideration. And I say that knowing that we've got some of the largest percentage of non-affiliated and independent voters in the state. So if we're going to go down that route, I will be vociferous in defending the interests of the non-affiliated voters and the independent voters. But I would prefer that we just exclude that from consideration. One thing less for us to worry about in the scheme of things.
And I think the reason it's there and why we intend to look at it is to really prove a negative, that we weren't having those considerations when we drew these districts. I think that was it. So Phil and then Melanie. Okay, Melanie, you're good? Okay.
I know from my experience, it's hard to prove a negative. So if you're looking at it, it means that it's something you're worried about, or what? I mean, if you pick your districts based on whatever criteria we agree to, so what if the numbers are? I mean, I agree that we don't need to consider political parties, and that's what I've been. In my mind, I'm trying to avoid. I don't even know what the political parties are, except that 65,000 are non-affiliated. So that's the main political party in Deschutes County.
It's in our criteria. but we can get rid of it fairly easily when we do all this other work and come up with 5 districts. And then I think the idea would be just to say, okay, and because it's public record, how people are registered, and the committee can say, there it is, but we didn't use this as a criteria. That's the direction that you'd probably end up going. Yes, Melanie.
Just to reiterate, part of our charter is no district shall be drawn for the purpose of favoring any political party, incumbent elected official, or other person. I think we have to check on that. And I agree, it's not the starting point. But I think we have to check on that when we get to the end and see if there is an unintended consequence of the way that we have drawn the districts that might violate that provision. If so, we need to make sure we fix that. But I agree, it's not a place to start from, and I am totally fine with having that sort of be more towards the end of the process as sort of a check on what we've done.
I guess I'll say what I was gonna say earlier is that we were talking about more demographic information and all the census data and all that. If there's groups that think that they are a group of common interest and we should consider that in mapping, they're welcome to do that, I think. But I don't think we're really tasked with searching through every connection people have. We can use our, what we know, et cetera. But again, it seemed like we were moving down the road of tasking the county to do more of that. And I just, and then the comments about night meetings versus day meetings. I mean, the schedule was arranged after 2 weeks of trying to get a time that everybody could be at the meetings. If we wanted to have some night hearing sessions, I get the difference between day meetings and night meetings. I, on the other hand, don't really like to go to night meetings, so I don't go to city council. But, it's hard for different people to do everything. But what if that's a need? That's a different need than demographics to me.
Other comments? All right.
Okay. I have one.
Yeah, Carol.
I think what I was hearing from the comments have been that people haven't had the opportunity because of work, including myself, to come in the middle of the day. A couple meetings ago, I suggested that we have an evening meeting for the purpose of public comments. It didn't necessarily mean that we would all have to be there and conduct a meeting like this. So just going back to reiterate that I think in order to be inclusive, we should have a meeting in the evening for people to come and express their comments and not be limited to 3 minutes in 30 minutes.
Melanie.
I second that motion.
Was that a motion, Carol?
Going back to do the other day, it can be.
We have a second from Melanie. Discussion on the motion. And I think the motion is to have one public meeting in the evening and leave it up to staff to find a place, and not everyone would have to be there. It would be just to take input. Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't certainly have a problem with, a public meeting. The concern would be that doing it at such a time as one or more of us, or maybe none of us could attend, kind of defeats the purpose of taking input for us to deliberate on.
Melanie.
So we've arranged the schedule as best we can with all of our schedules. I'll tell you right now, I told staff I would not be able to be available next Wednesday for a meeting. A meeting is still being held and I will not be able to be here. That's going to happen sometimes, I think. And so I don't think doesn't mean I can't watch back and listen to what everyone has said at public comment. I think that is a good reason why we shouldn't be having a dialogue with public comment, but we should just let the comments come to us for us to consider. Because that would do a disservice if not everyone was here to participate in a dialogue, right? But if there is opportunity for us to have a listening session, even if I can't make it, I will try my absolute best. But even if not, I will be able to listen back to what everyone has said. And I think it's important to provide that other opportunity for other folks in the community at that different time to present their views.
Drew.
So I would propose modifying that motion slightly. What we're looking for is a forum with a quorum. Yeah. I mean, if we have the majority of us there at this listening session, I think that makes sense to me. If it makes sense to everybody else. And we're talking about a listening session, basically just an evening meeting for public input, whatever it is, 90 minutes. I don't know, how much do we think we need? 90 minutes, 2 hours? We should probably say the length of the meeting we're looking at while we're moving on this.
And so that I'm clear, this would not be a meeting where you're trying to take, have the committee take action. In other words, there wouldn't be, you're there to listen, have a dialogue with people, but not vote on any particular map or option. Is that correct? Is that correct, Carol?
Yes, a public forum where people can express their opinions. In a 90 minutes would be my recommended time frame because I think you lose your audience.
Or we have a moving motion here.
Uh,
It's been approved.
Just
Jan.
a point of clarification, for time frame wise, I'm assuming we probably want enough time to notify the public and accurately get the word out. Are you looking to do this next week, the week after? I mean, staff can be very accommodating on when, just try to get.
I'm in October, I would say, just mid to later October.
Do we have to have this put in public records? Is that what you're getting at?
We'll publicly notice it.
Okay.
We want to have as transparent process as possible. We'll list it on our social media pages, allow other cities to list that as well, and anyone who wants to share that. So, we'd want to give adequate information, probably send out a media release, letting the media know that we're doing this so they can also post it.
And I think I heard some comment from the back saying perhaps even a weekend, so maybe a Saturday afternoon. I'm open.
We will take your guidance. Yes.
I just want to apologize in advance to Jen if it involves the herding of cats like it did just to get these meetings set up in the first place. I assume we're going to go through some exercise to see that we can ostensibly get a quorum to that meeting.
I can do the same thing that I did last time with a doodle poll, and I'll just take the one that has the most amount of members who can attend, and I'll give several options. So I'll put that out to this group by tomorrow, close the business tomorrow, and then I'll ask you guys to respond probably within 24 hours, and then we can get that notice. But we'll give several options to that doodle poll, and then we'll do the same thing, choose all options that are available to you, and then I'll select the date that has the most amount of responses. Does that sound good to everyone? And we'll do a couple weekends, a couple evening options, and I'll hear back from you all. Is that good?
Yes.
Melanie?
And just want to clarify that this would also be open for online.
Yeah, all of our meetings are in person and online available. Yep.
Further discussion?
Just in terms of time, I'd prefer to have it after we've at least completed the next two meetings, because we go to another community, then we get back to Deschutes, and kind of probably, I assume we'll be kind of.
And that probably happened anyway,
Yeah.
because the work staff has to do for the next two meetings.
Second half
And then,
of October.
and this will be in October.
So I'll look for dates the week of the 13th and the week of the 20th in October, and get that doodle poll out to y'all tomorrow. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Wrap up. I think we've covered a lot, and the next meeting will be in Lapine at the senior center there. I want to thank staff for all their hard work again, and continued hard work.
Just one
Yeah.
final comment that we had heard, and I actually had a question myself around the public comments that come in. So we get the emails that people send forwarded to us once a week. Are those going to be published on the DMAC website or part of the packet?
I am happy to take direction of the group. If you want those publicly posted, I can just put them all, I can do like a weekly PDF on our Deschutes.org/DMAC, and it'll just be public comments for this period, and then just group them, and I can post them each week. Sounds like,
That would
Yeah.
be great, I think.
I don't think we need a formal motion. I think everyone's nodding, so,
Okay, thank you, Jen.
And for those in the audience, we do get your emails, so we're already including that. All right, other questions or comments? If not, we're adjourned.
Thank you.